Why did Hashem make icebergs? The first thing that comes to your mind about an iceberg is they sink boats, right? The famous boat, the Titanic, sunk from an iceberg. They're like these things. What did Hashem have in mind when he made icebergs? There was a principle in the duties of the heart, the Chovat Levavot, that every single thing in this world, you can see the wisdom and kindness of Hashem. You just have to look. If you'll take a look at this, icebergs are actually part of a much larger piece of ice called a glacier. Glaciers are formed when it snows and it's very cold. In the summer, not all the snow melts, and therefore the following year there's more snow falls, and it gets packed up heavier and heavier and heavier until you have these giant blocks of ice that can be a mile thick and 1,000 miles long. These things move. Just to give you an idea about the size of a glacier, we have a helicopter ride through a Taylor Valley. It gives you an appreciation of just how big these glaciers are. Okay, like I said, they're a mile thick, 1,000 miles wide, and in addition to being large, they actually move. They're always moving. They can move. They move anywhere from 50 meters a year to 50 meters a day. You can imagine what's going on when this giant block of ice is going through the world. Now, let's say when they're moving, these glaciers, right? What's going on in the world? What's going on in the ground? And this is where it gets exciting about what they're going to do for us. Okay. What we see here is actually the process of what's going on. As a glacier moves, if you notice, when it moves on, there's a thin layer of water that's traveling underneath the glacier. The water is formed when there's a huge amount of pressure that's being put on the ice. It makes a thin layer of water. The water seeps into the rocks and then freezes because it's so cold. Watch what happens as the rock gets freezing, it gets plucked. In other words, the ice, when ice freezes, it expands. It pulls out a piece of rock and basically bulldozes its way across the land. They call it abrasion. As it's going, you're going to notice more and more pieces of earth and of material are going to get picked up and carried through the glacier. And at the end of the day, we're going to have massive amounts of rock and minerals in the earth. Now, what is an iceberg? An iceberg is basically a piece of one of these large glaciers that falls into the water. Like we said, we're moving. Some of them move towards the water, and eventually, if they're moving towards the water, a piece of them falls off. So this is actually a very special scene that you may or may never get another chance to see. I mean, you can always watch it on YouTube or something like that. But this is a really experience where we're going to watch an iceberg being felt. This is a glacier. Watch what happens when it falls into the water. An iceberg is born. What did Hashem have in mind with all this cool stuff that's going on? And in the seas, that just like you have to take your vitamins if you want to grow, every organism, every creature needs its vitamins. It needs its minerals to survive. In the water, the open seas, there's very little nutrients, especially iron. Very, very lack of iron. Something called a limiting nutrient. If you don't have your proper nutrition, life can't grow and flourish. These icebergs that were going as a glacier, they were tearing apart the earth, grinding up the earth that had minerals in it. When it becomes in an iceberg, it gets dropped into the sea and starts flowing out into the open ocean. As it flows out, it melts. And with it melts the iron and minerals, and especially iron, that life needs to exist. Photosynthetic algae and bacteria in the sea, life basically flourishes following these icebergs. If you take an infrared image, the red is basically chlorophyll. It's a sign of life that photosynthetic activity is taking place. And you'll notice how a giant iceberg, this is 50 kilometers long, is actually a flourishing of life is following the iceberg as it sails its way around the sea. So this was basically an ingenious way that God was able to get the fish, or the photosynthetic beings, the vitamins that they need. Just like we get our vitamins, Hashem sends every creature their vitamins. An ingenious plan. We could see the wisdom and we could see the kindness of Hashem in both providing the fish the food that they need, as well as us the food that we need when we eat them.